And
howdy ho, friends and foes, and welcome to Dads on Life, your weekly episodic show about parenting from a male perspective. I'm your host, Jay Miles, and with me, as always, are my co-host, Keith Logan.
a pleasure, sir.
Doug Hamadike.
Good afternoon.
And Chad Holloway.
Hello, folks.
Today, we're going to be talking about, we'll be touching on 9/11, which for timestamp purposes was the 20th anniversary yesterday. We'll be talking about that, how it impacts, if it's still impacting children, or whether it's just something in the history books, because as Keith brought up, and I mean, he'll go into it a little more, there was a grandchild who was reading, who was reading some of the names and mentioned his grandfather who he had never met. So that kind of, I mean, I will tell a story along the way as well, as we go into it. But who wants to kick us off?
I'll jump on that right away, just because it wasn't just one. This was, and maybe I wasn't paying attention enough in the last 5 years or so, but there was a whole string of young people who did a wonderful job. They were, there's always two people in the screen taking turns reading names, and they'll read a section of names and all that. And there was when I was watching, which was really in the 9:45 to 10:30 range. I kind of got on late, and there was quite a handful of at least one person in the pair who openly said, "I wasn't alive when you died in this tragic event, and I'm sad that I didn't get to meet you, but I know you would have been cool," and all that stuff. And yeah, there's a thought about what does it really mean to them, but it sort of inspired me that the next time I think I'm sitting with Justin and Jeremy, I think we have to have a more serious talk, because I don't know if we've ever sat down and really hashed through what it means to them, and if something they read in a history book is as impactful to them as, say, the current political scene or the current social issues that are going on. In the same way that, for me, I know I'm old as the hills and all that, but I really wasn't alive in World War II. So to me, that's something I read in the history books too. I wasn't alive for Korea. And quite frankly, my memories of Vietnam are extremely dim. Like, I only remember the last couple of years just before the withdrawal. And so that doesn't have a whole lot of impact on me either. I mean, I'm a student of history and I know it means a lot, but it's nowhere near the impact for me that 9/11 was. So what is the thing for the kids now? Because they all read that in history books. They weren't there at the time. Is Frankie or Justin the oldest kid? I forget in this group. Justin.
I think Justin is.
Frankie's only 20.
He's
20.
He's 20. He'll be 20. He'll be 21 in a few days.
So he's barely just a little bit older than Jeremy, who will be 20 in March. Yeah, so I mean, none of these kids. Justin was the only one actually alive when, and he was, barely a year old, barely 2 years old, I think.
Too close to probably 3. If he's 23, 2 probably.
He's 22 now. He'll be 23 in May, so he was a year and a half old. Okay. Yeah, so I mean, none of them. I think that they're all going to wind up looking at this the way we look at Vietnam or Korea or all that stuff. So what is it that defines the kids today? What is it that, what's their moment? Before 9/11, we've talked about this before. We talked about it a year ago. Before 9/11, I think our moment could have been the Challenger thing or something like that. But then it became, I think, for everybody. So have our kids even had that moment? Or is there so much white noise out there? And please don't make that a racist comment. Is there so much noise in the background and so many issues swirling around and so much that is divisive in the world that there's not even a specific topic because there's so many to focus on? That's kind of where I'm going with this thinking.
Well, I think, Keith, for us, we're emotionally attached, and we had those, feelings of like, we were dumbfounded, kind of as Jason was saying before the broadcast. He said there were two events. The first one was a plane hit one of the trade centers, and then when the second one hit, we knew what was up, and that was, and we're still like, oh, what? Or I was anyway. I was like, I can't believe this. I remember even at work, everybody was like walking around like zombies, and they let us go early that day. I mean, it was a crazy day. But I think for us, having people come in and attack, a main city, a central city in the central financial district, and successfully bring down two buildings and kill over 3,000 people, that being a part of that, it's part of our historical milieu. For our kids, it wasn't. To your point, Frankie was a year old at the time, and he doesn't know that stuff, and I think he empathizes with it, but he doesn't have I don't think he has the same feelings about it that our cohort here does. But I mean, I think all the kids, the older kids anyway, probably have, can empathize with it, what happened, kind of like us when you were talking about, World War II. I can empathize with that, but somebody who lived at that time was probably a whole different story for them. So yeah, I mean, and what is their kind of, what are there? Because I think there's more than one. What are their defining moments? And to your point about communication, something I read recently was this woman who was a single mother, and I think it was good regarding the communication piece of it. And she said she was always trying to communicate her perspective and her point to the children about, I'm a single mom. Can you help me? Things are tough. I need you to do this. And she said, finally, she figured out that parenting wasn't about them understanding her. It was about her understanding them. So she says, how do you feel about this? And then I think that was part of what you were talking about too, Keith, is like, when we need to talk to the kids and say, hey, well, what are the things that kind of got you upset, got you mad, made you think that there's this injustice and those kinds of things. But the other thing I do want to say is, in our society now, there's so much divisiveness. But after that, 20 years ago, I felt like we were unified. It didn't matter who you were. We were all Americans. We were all against the people who did that to us. It's the old us and them, but it was external to the United States.
At least for a few days, yeah.
Create that stuff within the United States. But that unity, I tell you what, I hated that we had the World Trade Centers, that happened at the World Trade Centers, but I like the unity.
Every science fiction movie that's ever been made about alien invasion has watched the human race come together in a unified way to fight against the invasion. So all that was art becoming reality. 9/11 had the exact same response. When there is a outside enemy, it unites the people inside. In this case, it was inside one country, but is that the only way we can be united? I think we're going down a completely wrong path here. It's what we really came here to talk about today. Jason, you had your hand up a little bit.
No, finish what you're saying, because I have a story about somebody who I'll get into it in a second. Finish what you're saying.
Well, for me, it's I go back to I don't think it's a stretch, even if my sons wind up watching this, which I doubt. and I don't think I'm going to be wrong when I say that the both of them are pretty angry about the landscape. But if you sat and talked to them, I'm pretty sure that there'll be a lot of different issues. All the things that we find is the political landscape, and all the ways that they think that younger people are not spoken for and represented properly. And in their opinion, the majority of the people are not represented properly because it's just a bunch of greedy old politicians who are doing what they can do to line their pockets. Boy, I could get into this topic and go crazy, but do they have the moment? Have they yet had anything that has defined their generation? And the more I think about it, the more I think no. I mean, we had the economic crash / recession of 2008 through 10. That's not going to define a generation. We've had Afghanistan for 20 years. I don't even want to talk about that. That's not going to define their generation. I'm not sure that they have that I guess you'd call it the seminal moment, the one thing that changed the trajectory. They didn't have a Kennedy assassination. They didn't have a 9/11. They didn't have a Challenger. Or they haven't yet. Even Sandy Hook, which to me is the most horrific example of all the mass shootings. I don't know if they were old enough, because actually that's been quite several years now since that happened. So I forget what year that was, but even that, because it's caught in this mess, that it happens a lot. So as horrific as Sandy Hook was, it's just one of many horrifying mass shootings. Just happened to be with younger children. I don't mean to minimize it by any means. I clearly see that one standing apart from all the others, but it's been a lot of that stuff. I don't know if that generation, if our kids' generation has yet had anything that defines it. Divisiveness.
Well, okay. Where should I start? First off, if you're talking about something similar to 9/11 that defines a generation, if you're looking for one for this generation, you can kind of start with the Boston Massacre bombing. With the bombing in Boston, you can start with that. Because despite all the that was different from the mass shootings. That was much more similar to, it was a little more similar to 9/11 type of thing. Or Oklahoma City or something like that. Now we have had a business associate. He retired. He owned a Boar's Head route, and I don't think they're married. I think they've been dating for a very long time. It's probably been 15 or 16 years they've been together. I mean, Vinny sold his route almost 7 years ago now, probably something like that. But Vinny, his girlfriend, is a widow of a 9/11 victim. I will tell you the story quickly. He was, she was on maternity leave, and he was with her. He had taken the day off, was going to meet his boss for a fishing trip out, either on Long Island or Queens or something like that. They were going on a fishing trip. They're going on a fishing boat. Probably Queens or something like that. Something on the water along the way before Long Island he was heading to, but decided to stop in the office because he had to do something or pick something up. Obviously, everything happened. There were two people from the company that survived: the boss and the wife, the pregnant wife at home. They were the only two people from the company that survived. Obviously, the kid is the son of a victim. Never met his father. So, I mean, I wish I could have gotten, thinking about this, I wish I could have gotten in touch with Vinny and maybe been able to, maybe they had the kid on with us. If I knew we were really going to do this today. But yeah, there's probably a lot of those stories that, so 9/11 definitely defined their part of this generation, but maybe the pandemic is going to be what defines this generation. Which, if that's the case, I think it's pretty fucked up because, despite the original statements of we're all in this together, clearly we're not. Now, going back to 9/11 itself, I remember for a while Actually, it was only, believe it or not, people talk about the first events and things like that not happening till that weekend. That's not true. The first person or first group to step up and say, we're going to kind of go on with what we were doing was Vince McMahon and the WWE decided that they were going to run their show SmackDown. I don't know if it was Friday or Thursday, usually, because at my time, I don't know. They went back and forth from Thursday and between Thursday and Friday for a little while. They were also on Tuesday nights. Clearly, it wasn't Tuesday night because it happened on a Tuesday. So it was either 2 days later or 3 days later. I don't know. And I remember distinctly. I will send the speech that Vince gave, and you guys can post it when he can post it if you want, because I can't post on Facebook right now. But yeah, it was actually for somebody who was just, he's just a business owner. It just so happens that the business that he owns is $1 billion company who puts on it's an entertainment program. It's what wrestling is. It's entertainment. It's meant to be sports entertainment is the best way to describe what wrestling is. It's not pro wrestling. It's sports entertainment. His speech was very resounding for, like I said, a guy who, sharp businessman, but maybe not the most savvy person to come out and be the first person to kind of really, that wasn't a politician, to come out and voice. But he absolutely voiced what everybody in this country at the time was thinking. You can do whatever you want to us, but we're not gonna stand here and take this shit. In fact, another one was that is pretty well known of speeches that have come out. Unfortunately, I tried and I really can't find it very easily online. Was Jon Stewart's opening monologue on the first Daily Show. And I mean, it is well documented what Jon Stewart has done for the heroes of 9/11 and victims of 9/11. He's been leading the charge. He was one of the leaders of the charge to get the 9/11 fund extended to an unlimited time for the 9/11 fund had a shelf life of, I think the shelf life was about a year ago, or a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. And through just finally getting out there, Congress and finally passed it to where lifetime benefits and things like that. What this politicians finally did was what they should have done in 2010, probably. Just said, okay, we're done with this contract that we have, and we're just going to extend everybody the benefits and shit lifetime, because the right thing to do. They also, they should be doing it for the Vietnam veterans too, but especially those who were exposed to Agent Orange. But that's a statement for another time. But yeah, he and Stewart's opening monologue, he said, the World Trade Centers used to be my view when I wake up in the morning. He goes, guess what my view is now? My view is the Statue of Liberty. And guess what? It's still there. They may not they can do whatever they want. But if that statue is still standing, we're still here. And that was pretty much where he left it. So yeah. Now, as for our kids, Delana talked about it a little bit. She She knows about it. They do. And she's only in fourth grade, so they have talked about it in elementary schools at least. I don't know what length, but hopefully great length so that they know what the world went through at that time. But as for the unity, yeah, I've said it before that I think somewhere Martin Luther King was probably sitting there going, hey, they're finally fucking getting it right. They're finally starting to get it right. And they're finally starting to realize that they got to come together. Unfortunately, I think it lasted, maybe 6 to 8 months before everyone kind of went back on about their lives and forgot about it. You had everyone going back to the bipartisan societies we live in. It's sad. It's very sad how quickly that unity faded.
A unity we never got at all from the pandemic.
No. I as I said, no.
Talk about the ultimate foreign invader, and it didn't bring us together at all.
Nope.
Doug, you've been awful quiet. What's going on with you?
Just getting over, we did like a little Vince bachelor party type thing last night, so didn't get home till like 3:30. But yeah, and then my
You can
neighbor,
talk.
yeah,
How did the cow tipping go?
oh yeah, no cow tipping, just a lot of card playing. And my neighbor just twice took his ride-on right across the friggin' cement. It's unreal. But
His
anyway,
lawnmower? Oh God,
yeah.
what the hell was he thinking?
I have no idea. I don't. It's a John Deere too, a big green tractor. Anyway,
Was he nuts?
so anyway,
The blade on that fucking thing's expensive as hell to replace.
Yeah.
Stupid.
yeah, I have no idea. I mean, he's not a kid. I mean, whatever. So I was like thinking what you were all saying, and I know my boys, they know about 9/11, what went on. They had their moment of silence at school and all, and I'm sure it gives you a moment to reflect. But if you didn't really live in it, I agree with you guys, like how, besides taking the moment to think about it, I don't know how it personally really affected them, the whole like thing outside of knowing what they know, the history of it, and how it went on into a war, and more or less Brendan as well, is it's more of a historical moment than really have a lot of meaning for him. What I guess more or less has affected my boys that I could see is it was the BLM riots, only because it went on for like every day nearly. There was something going on that maybe not necessarily was a riot, but had something to do with George Floyd or race in the news. So that really affected them, only because the constant in the media something every day, for at least a good couple months, and then it would go away, and then all of a sudden it would pop up again, because we wanted to go down to Reading Terminal Market, and things were going on in Philly, and I was like, guys, now's not really the time to go to Philly. And I remember that coming up. But one of the other things that we've mentioned already a couple times is COVID. And my kids, as well as everybody, their life has been upended, school and all. And it was something that it was more or less, well, we're getting through it. We didn't have any personal like issues with it at all. And it's like, we understand the masking, we understand the shots, mask on, mask off and stuff. But now that my parents have it, it really is taking a different toll on the family and the children, particularly now that they actually have someone that's directly affected, and it's their grandparents, So
Yeah, my kids too.
so that it definitely is something that they're not going to forget, is this pandemic, And it's really a pivotal moment, I guess, in our family's life right now, is that so
Well, I mean, like I said, I feel for your kids, and I understand, where they are coming from. My wife's parents had it. It almost, I don't want to say it's been so long we almost kind of forgot about it. We haven't. I mean, we remember it because them getting it, thank goodness, the only major impact from that was we weren't able to have Thanksgiving. So my mother-in-law was pretty sick for a while there. Obviously nowhere near as touch and go as it ever became with my aunt. But yeah, I really truly feel for your family, Doug. Unfortunately, we've heard a lot of this. We've heard too much of this. And I'm going to say the fact that most Americans, by the time this is over, will have had some kind of family impact. This will have had some kind of impact on their family in one way or another, be it a mild case, be it whatever it was. Pretty much a large majority of the American families around the world will have been impacted by that. Just similar to 9/11, similar to in this country, Pearl Harbor, which unfortunately, in my family and my wife's family, probably one of the last people who would have been impacted by that passed away in August with my grandfather-in-law. Everybody else pretty much of that generation on both sides of the family are gone. Maybe one or two, but I think Judy is probably the oldest, but I still think not really old enough to have been impacted by it too much, or would have been so young that it wouldn't have had too much of an impact on her life. Kennedy, yes. Kennedy assassination. I've spoken to my mother throughout my life a couple of times, being not just a history buff, but nearly a double major in journalism and history. Spoken to it with my mother and father a couple of times. My dad was kind of just doing his own thing, so it's not that profound, and it didn't have too profound an impact on him. My mom, it was a little bit more, because he was, the Irish politician from Massachusetts, and my grandmother on my mother's side was first generation born American from Ireland. So there were multiple level impact for them. They another one I really wish I would have met would have been my grandmother, and been able to talk to her about it. Yeah. But as for the pandemic and Black Lives Matter, if they don't define, if the pandemic and the George Floyd thing don't define this generation, they're damn sure going to leave scars on this generation.
I would wholeheartedly agree with that. And a lot of what you just said really resonated with me because um, a lot of these things have a lot of long-term effect. Um, there are families that we saw in yesterday's reading with all the kids who won't have mothers or fathers growing up or grandparents growing up, and they were, 12-year-old kids reading stuff or 15-year-old kids reading stuff. But the same is true of the people we lost in Vietnam. The same is true of the people that we never knew who would have come into existence had it not been for all the losses of World War II. And those effects keep going. A side topic that I'm sure will inspire some sidebar in this conversation after this call is over is the whole reason I'm not in our shared group anymore, FUBAR, is because of the incredible insensitivity of some of the members to the Holocaust and some of the really horrifying things that were shared in that group over the last number of weeks now. But they don't understand it because they never experienced it. Yet I sit here with three brothers, two nephews and a niece, one very distant uncle and one aunt, and that's my whole family. And a large part of that is because most of the relatives I would have had never got to exist because they died in the concentration camps. At one point, my family was, before I was born, my father, his brother, his mom and dad, and a cousin. And my mother's family was her parents, and that was it. And I think there were some other relatives on my mother's side that I'm not aware of, but they were sort of strewn to the winds. It's very difficult for most people who aren't Jewish to comprehend that. So when they make casual jokes about twin bakeries when they're pointing at gas ovens and jokes like that, to them it's just jokes. But that sort of thing still happens today, not just from World War II and not just from Vietnam. I'm sure we're still doing that about 9/11. And I think part of what today's generation is trying to point out is that we're really bad at identifying that sort of thing about who it might offend because it doesn't offend us. I start to hear more and more of the voices of my boys when I delve into these subjects more and more because I'm one of those people who's like, God, can't I say anything that isn't offensive to somebody? And at some points I wonder if there isn't. They've really wrapped themselves around the concept that the way we speak to each other is careless. And that's part of what's defining their generation, I think, that there is a lot of casual humor out there that is not thought through. And I get it. And, it was my choice to, okay, that wasn't for me. So I got out of the group. That's cool. I'm not sitting there bemoaning the fact, oh, that person was really terrible. Those people were very terrible for Postman. To them, it means there's no meaning to them. But that just means they're better places for me to stay. Our kids' generation is different because they don't accept that they need to get out of groups. They want to stop the behavior in the first place. I think that's the big difference between Frankie and Justin and Jeremy and the four of us. And I picked on them because of the oldest ones, but obviously the other kids matter too. All kids matter. Even a joke like that can be offensive to some people. They don't want to have, they would look at me and say, you got out of the group, but you didn't solve the problem. And I look at them and say, I don't look at it as a problem. I just don't need to be there. No right or wrong. Different perspectives, but they would not agree with what I did.
Well, it's interesting to me, you know, and certainly I respect your decision to leave the group and everything. And if it's offensive, then you got to do that. And it's like there've been groups in Facebook that I've left as well, because it's just like, this just isn't for me. But I think the difference for me is if somebody is talking about it, or somebody has a meme, and even if it's offensive to me, you know, a lot of times I'll scroll by. But for me, it's more about behavior. If I see somebody's behavior changing, or, you know, if I saw somebody going after somebody on the street, that's when I would take action more than, because Facebook for me is kind of, I don't know, it's almost not reality. It's just like a bunch, you know, it's like a place to go and maybe make jokes, maybe they're, you know, some people, maybe they're offensive, and it depends on the groups you belong to and things, but that's just more just like jacking around, I think. But I think if you see people like starting to take action, starting to behave towards somebody, that's where I start to pay attention much more. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. And, you know, we each have our own levels of sensitivities. Like I keep saying, it's not right or wrong. It's you know, your view it works for you. My view, I think, works for me.
Mhm.
They don't have to be the same thing. We've got plenty of things that we look at things differently on, and we got plenty of things that we're in lockstep on. It's great. It's what makes us brothers, I think. Yeah, I think my tolerance is a little lower, and my maybe my conflict avoidance is a little lower too. I learned that from my marriage, but we're not going to go down that road today.
Yeah. As far as the group goes, I post a lot of stuff and a lot of offensive stuff. Sorry to say, but I don't know. I mean, I might horrify myself on some of the things I posted, and that's the only place that they belong. And sometimes I question myself, and I'm like, well, if you know, some people laugh, then fine. But once or twice I've gotten some comments going, and I pretty much, as soon as I see the comments flying, I delete it myself. Like, I think it was like a week ago. Somebody started to comment. I was like, all right, well, enough of that. I just delete the whole meme. I'm like, I don't want to reply. I don't want anybody else replying anymore. It didn't go the way that I thought it would. So let's call it a day, you know? And if I've ever offended any of you, well, good.
Rest easy, my brother Doug. It was not you who made me leave the group. But no, you and I have some very interesting differences, you know, particularly along some political lines. Although we have some fascinating similarities too, along in the same arena. But no, it wasn't you.
I don't remember seeing anything.
Yeah, we're not gonna be calling out names today. It's okay.
I don't remember seeing anything Holocaust related, and I don't remember that being the reason. I thought it was the movie thing.
I don't even remember. One of the things I'm really good at, if something
The movie thing because of a certain movie title.
Yeah, I remember that one. Yes, no, that I did. That was the one that you and I had some very interesting back office
You
banter
left
on.
right after that.
I
didn't see
still
anything.
disagree with how you handled that, but that's okay. It's your group. But no, it was about a week after that the final nails in the coffin.
I didn't see that. I didn't see anything Holocaust related. I didn't. Probably because I was banned. I was probably banned.
You should be duct taped and bound and gagged too.
Oh no. Let's be honest. What they banned me for this time is a little ridiculous. Honestly. If you think, I told you exactly why they banned me. It's
okay. We're gonna have a whole different conversation about being, a whole different show about being banned from Facebook. And I'm just gonna sit there and be quiet.
I'll say it. I'll say it. I don't care. I made a joke saying that somebody must have gotten the good weed for the way they did something. And they banned me for saying that I was trying to distribute and sell weed. Please tell me, please explain to me how you get that out of me saying he must have gotten the good weed. If you can explain that, I'll accept being banned.
And now we're going to post this show on a Facebook group, and they'll ban you again.
They can't ban you for a statement, because if they don't ban people for memes, they're not going to ban me for saying this.
No, we should put you in a box anyway. What am I talking about?
Keith,
where's the Vaseline? Oh, never mind. I think we've gotten a little off track here, my friends.
Anyway, no, there's it's kind of scary to sit here and say that that this generation doesn't have a defining event yet.
Especially after the fact we're in a pandemic. Yeah.
We're in a pandemic, all that happened with the George Floyd thing, Vegas, Boston, Sandy Hook, where else can I? Texas, South Carolina. I hate to think what's next and what's worse.
Well, it's all, but I wonder if over time things have become more desensitized, with movies, with video games. If you think about the video games we used to play, in reality, it was, like it was paddles and, hitting the moving balls or whatever, or it wasn't the violence that kids have now. And so I think there's a desensitization process that goes on as well. I mean, even when you talk about, the Floyd situation, we had, what was the one guy, Rodney King, we had that in our generation, and I mean, there are a series of events that we've had as well that impact us, but I think the reason that the World Trade Center impacts me so much, and I would say in general, other people is my hypothesis, is because of the helplessness, because it's not confined. It was a large scale, and it's something that took my paradigm of national security and changed it. It showed how vulnerable we were versus somebody with a gun in some city, and I mean, I don't want to. Those things are also important, but those are much more common. I mean, it kind of are, to a certain extent. I think we've become desensitized to those types of things as well. It has to be pretty egregious for us to get upset.
And
sorry, go ahead.
oh no, I was going to say that we've been just focusing on a lot of like negative things and stuff. And one of the other things is that I was just thinking about, like, trying to think of like really positive things that, people as a country would come together. And it used to be like, the Olympics, and you had your American pride, and everybody was interested in following it and how well we did as a country and all. And I think that how divided we are as a country on a lot of things, and even stuff like that, when it came down to it, just how the whole idea of having everybody watch and have this camaraderie, but even that had to turn into a news story, and people had to argue about it, and something that should have been so positive became shrouded by such negativity. It almost became terrible. Like a lot, it really almost turned me off, that I didn't really even want to watch anymore. Just being stuck on a couple different subjects about it. And the other thing was talking about like a lot of the negative points that define us, define different moments in our life and stuff, what will define our kids, and all, with the coming down of the Lee Monument, with the time capsule. So they're gonna, put in a new time capsule, and the items that were put in a new time capsule are a lot more things that all deal with just like as a country where we are, but a lot of it is just like sad, when you think about it, that
Mhm.
this is really what defines, the United States.
Um, well, that's interesting you mentioned the Olympics because I can go back. You can go back to 16. You go back to 12, and 18. I get 18 would have been the Winter Olympics. I don't even remember really anything from the 18 Winter Olympics. But yeah, I see what you mean. Because if I remember correctly, besides from where they had the 16 Olympics, and there was like one, negative thing that happened, and that was the Ryan Lochte situation where he falsely accused, which ended up being him being a drunken idiot, more or less, or a stone. Well, no, not stone, drunken idiot, and just it being in Brazil and some of the problems that they had. I remember one of the stories was how badly in what the pool was like during the Olympics. That it was just horrible that these people were actually swimming in this, diving in the diving pool. It was pretty rough. But yeah, I know what you're driving at too. One news story in particular dominated the headline. Well, more than one news story really dominated the headlines because you had what's her name, the runner, and then the whole transgender, some of the transgender athletes, things with those, which some of them didn't have a negative spin to them. Some of them kind of did. But I mean, not a topic I really want to get into, but for as much, for as many things you hear about transgender athletes, the stories of those like the female who became a male who was forced to compete with the girls despite wanting to compete with the boys in Texas in wrestling. Stories like that get swept under the rug. You don't hear those stories that much.
You're actually hammering a point for me that that's very interesting, and that is, I was going to bring in the social media aspect, which we've talked about before, but the whole concept of, does the generation that our kids are in have a chance to have a focal point, that moment, that defining event, when there's social media, when everything is highlighted, everything is breaking news, everything is in their face constantly, and everything is dramatic, in our opinion, dramatically overblown at times. I mean, nothing can be as horrific as the pandemic, and yet thousands of other topics are made to be that way by media, social and otherwise. So, by the way, just a side note, how old is Delana now?
10, she'll be 11.
So neither of your daughters was alive for Sandy Hook or Boston.
Yes, they were.
Sandy Hook was,
Boston, yeah.
Sandy Hook was 2000. Oh, I'm sorry, 10 she was. Sandy Hook was 2012. Boston was 13. Again, they couldn't possibly have been impacted by that at all. And quite frankly, even Justin at 13 years old, That was probably the time when he was starting to figure out some stuff. So Sandy Hook probably impacted him. But even Doug's boys were too young to really, I don't know if they even really remember Sandy Hook. Frankie and Justin probably have the best shot at it, or, at least to be impacted by it. But that in the last 20 years, Sandy Hook is not even in the top 5 of generation defining moments, is a screaming indictment of media, social media and otherwise, that everything is horrifying now. I'm not saying everything is horrifying now, but the media is. And so are they going to be robbed? That's going to sound really sick, of their defining moment, which should be, in my opinion, the pandemic, because everything else is hyped so much? Don't know. We could talk about this for days.
Well, I think because they have so much coming in, so much stimuli, and because everything's important, right? That, again, I think it's a desensitization process. It's like, oh yeah, there's another shooting. There's I heard today more kids died in Chicago, have died this year now in Chicago from shootings than they have from COVID. And
Well, that's not a surprise.
yeah, no,
It's not a
exactly.
surprise,
But
unfortunately, in Chicago.
it's a horrendous thing, but listen, that's exactly my point. It's not a surprise. It's because everything is, so much happens, and it's just like we've become desensitized. It's a horrible thing, but it's not a surprise, because that's the way I feel that way. I mean, it's a horrible thing, but like I kind of feel, oh yeah, it's another statistic on the news.
We're kind of brushing up, I believe. I don't remember exactly what time we started. I think it was
We're about an hour.
That's right. Anybody have anything they want to add before we head on out? Don't all talk at once.
I think we're good, my man. You can wrap it.
So we head on to another week of everything starting up, and really starting up for the kids, especially school-age kids, where they head into their first full weeks of school. Oh, sorry, no, they don't head in their first full week of school. I think the first full week of school next week, because Yom Kippur they have off. At least our schools do.
You're welcome.
There are plenty of discussions that we'll be having coming up, because I believe at least in 2 of the states, I'm pretty sure, Doug, can you confirm, does Pennsylvania have the mask mandates for school or no?
It goes district by district, but where I live, yeah.
Okay, so it's district by district. Here it was, the governor said it was mandatory for all for everybody. We obviously, I'm sure that's a discussion that'll come up. There's a ton of topics coming up that, because, we have this evolving animal, so to speak, monster, if you want to call it that, of a pandemic going on. And it's got a firm grip on us. It doesn't seem that it's going to let go. But as for 9/11, the impact of it will never be lost on the people of this country, for the people of this world to an extent, because obviously there were other countries that lost people in 9/11 and in the events around it, in DC, in in New York, Pennsylvania. And like I said, as for the events that come now for this generation, I just hope that they don't end up having to face something like 9/11. Because if they do, I prefer not to even think what will become in this country if it happens again. So, from all of us here at Dads on Life, take care, everybody.
Take care.
Later.
Yeah, see you next week.